In the harsh frontier where law bends to wealth and power, a woman kneels bloodied in chains. Her brutal husband stands above her, fist raised for another blow as dust swirls around them. The townsfolk avert their eyes, all except one. An Apache warrior, scarred by his own violent past, steps boldly into the street. His revolver catches the morning sunlight as he aims at the husband's chest with unwavering precision. "She's mine now," he declares, voice cutting through the stunned silence like a knife. Their eyes meet, hers filled with desperate hope, his with quiet resolve. Can a woman who's known only cruelty find freedom with a mysterious stranger? Will his act of mercy ignite a war that threatens everything? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. A locket with a faded portrait dangles from Jane's pale fingers as she stands at the bow of a westbound train. The Boston harbor recedes behind her, taking with it the only life she has ever known. The daughter of a respected merchant, Jane's education and refinement had prepared her for society, not survival. Her marriage to Harold Blackwood promised prosperity and adventure in the expanding frontier. His letters spoke of vast cattle holdings and a fine house in Copper Creek, a growing settlement with aspirations of civilization. The journey west spans weeks. Through the train window, Jane watches as manicured gardens give way to rolling farmland, then to vast prairies, and finally to the rugged wilderness of the frontier. With each passing mile, Harold's demeanor shifts. His courteous attentiveness gradually hardens into curt commands. The first time he grips her arm too tightly, she tells herself it is merely concern for her safety in these wild territories. Copper Creek emerges from the dust like a mirage, not the prosperous town of Harold's descriptions, but a rough collection of wooden structures along a single dirt street. The promised mansion is a two-story house at the edge of town, grand only by comparison to the surrounding cabins. Jane's new home reveals the first of Harold's many lies. Dust covers fine furniture that Harold claims came from San Francisco. The cattle baron owns merely 30 head, not the thousands he boasted of in Boston. His standing in town, however, proves real enough. Men nod respectfully as Harold passes. The sheriff laughs too loudly at his jokes. Town councilmen seek his counsel. For Jane, the walls close in quickly. Harold forbids her from visiting the small lending library without his escort. Her attempt to organize a ladies' sewing circle meets with his swift disapproval. The first strike comes after she speaks too long with the young shopkeeper. The second after questioning Harold's business dealings. By the third month, Jane learns to move silently, to anticipate his moods, to become invisible. From the shadows of the mercantile, Elton watches. His Apache clothing marks him as an outsider, yet something in his bearing suggests he straddles two worlds. The tribal tattoos on his forearms contrast with eyes that have seen beyond the reservation boundaries. The shopkeeper tolerates his presence for his excellent furs and medicinal herbs, though conversations halt when he enters. A small leather pouch hangs from Elton's neck, weathered and adorned with intricate beadwork. Inside rests a smooth river stone, a golden locket with no picture, and a scrap of faded red cloth, remnants of two worlds that shaped him. His fingers often find this medicine bundle when memories surface or decisions weigh heavily. Harold's business dealings reveal themselves through whispered conversations that halt when Jane enters the room. Land deeds pass hands in smoke-filled back rooms of the saloon. The Apache reservation boundaries mysteriously shift on county maps. Copper Creek's mayor signs documents without reading them, accepting Harold's interpretation as gospel. What began as cattle ranching has evolved into speculation, with Harold positioning himself to control the water rights for the entire valley. Jane discovers the truth accidentally. While searching for a misplaced handkerchief in Harold's study, she finds correspondence revealing his manipulation of tribal agreements. The Apache believe they've secured their ancestral waterways through the latest treaty. Harold's letters to Eastern investors tell a different story of damming the creek come spring, of rich farmland that will multiply in value once irrigation channels divert the water from reservation lands. Harold's drinking worsens as his schemes expand. The whiskey bottle emerges earlier each day. His temper, already volatile, becomes unpredictable. The bruises Jane wears beneath high collars and long sleeves multiply. She learns to time her movements around the house to avoid his worst moments. Seeking help proves futile. Sheriff Dawson tips his hat politely to Jane in town, but turns deaf ears to her careful hints about Harold's violence. The town's only doctor examines her broken wrist without meeting her eyes, writing household accident in his ledger. The young preacher speaks of wifely duty and submission during his Sunday sermons. Only Martha, the widowed boarding house owner, offers genuine concern. When Jane visits to donate old linens, Martha's knowing eyes see past practiced smile. In the privacy of the linen closet, Martha presses a small key into Jane's palm. To the boarding house's back entrance, should emergency arise. Elton observes from the periphery. His visits to town grow more frequent as Jane's condition deteriorates. The Apache elders counsel patience and non-interference with white affairs, especially with treaty negotiations in delicate balance. But Elton's own history makes such detachment impossible. Orphaned at 8, when settlers attacked his family's homestead, he had straddled two worlds even before the Apache found him half dead from exposure. His Cherokee mother and white father had taught him to navigate between cultures. The Apache mountain people adopted him, recognizing something valuable in a child who understood the white man's ways yet bore no loyalty to their cruelty. For 20 years, Elton has served as an unofficial intermediary, trading furs and herbs in frontier towns while gathering information vital to tribal security. He obeys tribal wisdom until the morning Jane appears in the general store with bruises too severe to hide and eyes vacant from despair. Their interaction lasts mere seconds. Jane reaches for a bolt of calico as Elton selects hunting supplies. Their fingers briefly occupy the same space. Eyes meet. Recognition of shared suffering passes between them. Wordless yet profound. Harold enters, spots the exchange, and yanks Jane away, fingertips digging into her arm. That night produces the worst beating yet. Jane's desperate plan had been simple. Martha's offered room, a stagecoach ticket purchased in secret, escape to Denver or beyond. The crumpled ticket falls from her pocket during Harold's rage. Understanding dawns on his face, followed by cold fury. Dawn finds Jane chained like an animal. Harold drags her through Copper Creek's main street as an example, announcing to gathering townsfolk that his wife attempted to steal from him, to abandon her sacred vows. Blood trickles from Jane's split lip as dust coats her torn dress. Harold jerks the chain, forcing her to kneel before him in the street. From the shadowed space between the gunsmith's shop and the feed store, Elton watches. The medicine bundle at his chest grows hot against his skin. 20 years of caution and tribal diplomacy balance against the woman bleeding in the dirt. The peaceful ways of his adopted people war with memories of his parents' bodies sprawled in frontier dust, victims of similar cruelty left unchallenged. His hand moves to the silver revolver at his hip. The moment of decision arrives. The silver revolver gleams in the morning sun, its worn pearl grip molded to Elton's hand through years of necessity rather than choice. Unlike the crude weapons favored by most frontiersmen, this revolver speaks of craftsmanship and deliberate precision. A gift from his white father, it represents both the violence that orphaned him and the protection it now offers others. Elton steps from the shadows into the harsh light of Copper Creek's main street. Townsfolk freeze at the sight of an Apache warrior moving purposefully toward their most prominent citizen. Harold's hand instinctively moves toward his own sidearm, but stops when he registers the revolver already aimed at his chest. 20 feet separate the men, with Jane kneeling bloodied between them. Silence descends as Elton utters the words that will forever change 3 lives. The declaration hangs in the dust-filled air, impossible to retract. Harold's face contorts with rage and disbelief. A man unaccustomed to challenge. The gathering crowd instinctively retreats, creating a wider circle around the confrontation. Women pull children behind skirts. Men reach for weapons but hesitate, uncertain of the proper response when their social hierarchy faces such blatant disruption. Sheriff Dawson pushes through the crowd, hand on his holstered pistol. His weathered face reveals the calculation of a man weighing personal loyalty against public disorder. The badge on his chest represents law that has always bent comfortably around Harold Blackwood's desires. Today, it sits uncomfortably against divided loyalties. Elton speaks again, his perfect English surprising those who assumed him a reservation savage. He invokes white man's law with unexpected precision, claiming Jane as payment for an outstanding debt. Harold's timber deal with the Apache mountain people remains unfulfilled. The promised payment diverted to Eastern investors instead. By tribal custom and territorial statutes regarding debt settlement, Elton claims the right of property transfer. Jane's eyes widen at this unexpected development. Trading one owner for another was not the salvation she had imagined. Yet something in Elton's steady gaze communicates a message beyond his harsh words. Harold sputters denials, but Elton produces a folded document from his leather vest, the original contract with Harold's flamboyant signature, clearly visible. The town's banker and a council member move closer, examining the document with concern. Their whispered conference confirms the signature's authenticity. Harold's business practices have always skirted ethical boundaries, but outright defrauding tribal partners threatens the delicate peace upon which frontier commerce depends. The council member places a restraining hand on Harold's arm, voice low but insistent. Apache troubles would devastate the town's hopes for the coming railroad spur. The banker nods agreement. Their personal distaste for seeing a white woman claimed by an Apache warrior balances against the greater economic risk of tribal conflict. Harold capitulates with bad grace, shrugging off the councilman's hand. He spits near Jane's huddled form before unlocking her chains with deliberate slowness. As the metal falls away from her raw wrists, he leans close to whisper promises of reclamation and punishment that drain remaining color from Jane's face. Elton maintains his distance and his aim until the chains lie fully discarded in the dirt. Only then does he holster his weapon and approach Jane with measured steps. He offers no hand to help her rise, no comforting words for the spectating townsfolk to criticize. His face remains impassive as she struggles to stand on unsteady legs. With a slight gesture, Elton indicates she should walk ahead of him, toward the edge of town where his horse waits. Jane moves with the stiff dignity of someone conscious of watching eyes, though her torn dress and blood-matted hair make mockery of her attempts at composure. The crowd parts silently, faces registering emotions from disgust to pity to shameful relief. Martha watches from her boarding house porch, hands clutched tightly together, her earlier solution rendered unnecessary by this unexpected intervention. Elton's painted mare stands ground-tied at the town's edge, saddlebags already packed as if he had anticipated this outcome. Without speaking, he mounts and extends an arm to pull Jane up behind him. Her hesitation lasts only moments before the reality of her situation forces decision. Harold's distant figure, still flanked by concerned town officials, represents a known hell. Elton offers only uncertainty. Jane grasps the offered forearm and finds herself lifted easily to the horse's back. As they turn toward the distant mountains, she neither clings to Elton's waist nor looks back at the town that failed to protect her. Between them, silence holds all questions and answers in temporary abeyance. The horse's steady rhythm carries them into the wilderness, where different rules apply. A small leather-bound journal rests in the bottom of Jane's gathered skirts as she rides behind Elton. Its worn cover bears the impressions of hasty writing, pages swollen from tears shed upon them. For 3 years this hidden record catalogued Harold's escalating cruelty, dates, injuries, broken promises, a secret testimony Jane maintained even when hope abandoned her. Now it represents the only possession she managed to conceal during her public humiliation. The journey into Apache territory spans 2 days. They follow game trails invisible to untrained eyes, crossing shallow streams to obscure their path. Elton speaks rarely, pointing out necessary water stops or warning of difficult terrain ahead. At night he builds a small fire and offers Jane the only blanket, maintaining a respectful distance that gradually eases her rigid vigilance. Their destination reveals itself on the afternoon of the 2nd day, a hidden canyon accessible through a narrow rock passage. A small cabin nestles against the canyon wall, constructed of local timber and stone, with a craftsmanship that speaks of both Apache and white building techniques. A clear spring bubbles nearby, feeding a small garden plot. Smoke-dried meat hangs from the cabin's covered porch. Jane steps from the horse with legs stiff from unaccustomed riding. The cabin's isolation strikes her with conflicting emotions, safety from Harold's reach, yet complete dependence on this stranger who claimed her like property. Elton gestures toward the cabin door, indicating she should enter first. Inside, the single room surprises her with its orderliness and unexpected comforts. A stone fireplace dominates one wall, simple furnishings, a table, 2 chairs, storage chests, show skilled woodworking. Furs and woven blankets cover a raised sleeping platform. Most surprising are the books, dozens of them organized on crude shelves. Titles in English, Spanish and languages Jane cannot identify line the wall. This man of few words surrounds himself with thousands of them bound in leather and cloth. Elton enters behind her, maintaining distance. He gestures to the sleeping platform, then to himself, then to the floor near the fireplace. The meaning becomes clear. The bed is hers. He will sleep elsewhere. The simple courtesy brings unexpected tears to Jane's eyes, quickly blinked away before he notices. Days pass in cautious adjustment. Elton hunts, tends his garden, repairs equipment. Jane finds herself gravitating toward the domestic tasks that filled her married life, yet discovers the difference between forced servitude and chosen contribution. When she cooks using unfamiliar native plants, Elton nods appreciation. When she organizes his medical supplies, he makes no complaint. Their first real conversation occurs over a week after their arrival. 2 hawks, Elton's blood brother, from the Apache settlement, visits the cabin. Younger than Elton by perhaps a decade, he greets Jane with solemn courtesy before sharing news with Elton in their native tongue. The tribal elders disapprove of Elton's intervention, fearing retribution against their people. The tentative peace with white settlers grows more fragile with each passing season. After 2 hawks departs, Jane's questions flow hesitantly at first, then with increasing urgency. Elton's answers come slowly but honestly. He explains Apache customs of honor and obligation. A warrior cannot ignore suffering when intervention lies within his power. The tribe's caution stems from harsh experience rather than callousness. His own position among them remains complicated, respected for his knowledge of white ways, yet always marked as different. Jane gradually shares her own story in evening conversations, her Boston upbringing, her father's ambitions for advantageous marriage, her initial hope that Harold represented adventure in a new land. Elton listens without judgment or interruption, his stoic expression softening slightly as her narrative unfolds. The cabin's books reveal another layer of Elton's complex identity. Jane discovers he reads in 4 languages, educated by a missionary who found him after his parents' deaths, but before the Apache adoption. The old man recognized unusual intelligence in the traumatized child and taught him for 3 years before consumption claimed the missionary's life. Elton returned to his adopted tribe carrying books and bitter knowledge of 2 worlds. As days turn to weeks, Jane's body heals from Harold's final beating. The bruises fade, split skin knits together. She begins accompanying Elton on short hunting excursions, learning the canyon's hidden resources. At night she sleeps increasingly soundly on the raised platform, while Elton maintains his pallet by the fire. Her leather journal acquires new entries, observations of canyon flowers, medicinal plants, Elton identifies the flight patterns of eagles nesting on high canyon walls. For the first time in years, she records something besides pain. A clay bowl sits between them, its surface etched with ancient patterns that spiral inward toward the center. Smoke rises from crushed herbs, smoldering atop a small coal. Elton guides the fragrant smoke toward Jane's face, explaining the healing properties of each plant: sage for cleansing, cedar for strength, sweetgrass to invite beneficial spirits. The bowl itself, he tells her, belonged to the medicine woman who saved him after he was found half dead from exposure as a child. His fingers trace the patterns reverently, connecting to memories of gentle hands that once tended his own wound. Jane's visible injuries heal under Elton's careful ministrations. The cut above her eye closes without infection. Bruised ribs gradually permit deeper breaths without stabbing pain. The raw skin where chains bit into her wrists forms new pink scars that Elton treats with a salve of bearberry and pine resin. Yet the deeper wounds, the flinch when he moves too quickly, the nightmares that wake her gasping in darkness, require different medicine. Dawn finds them gathering plants along the canyon walls. Elton's knowledge flows in careful instruction as Jane learns to identify healing herbs, which leaves to harvest, which roots to dry, which flowers contain poison, and which bring sleep. Her merchant father's daughter once memorized ledgers and accounts. Now she commits to memory the natural pharmacy surrounding them. When her fingers correctly identify yarrow without prompting, Elton's brief smile feels like unexpected sunshine. Nightmares plague them both. Jane's terror echoes from the sleeping platform. Harold's hands around her throat, Harold discovering her hiding place. On particularly bad nights, she wakes to find Elton already awake, adding wood to the fire. His silent presence grounding her, return to reality. His own demons surface less frequently, but with greater violence. He thrashes against invisible enemies, calling out in mixed languages. Jane learns to speak softly from a distance, until awareness returns to his eyes. Their shared brokenness forms the first true bridge between them. One evening after a particularly vivid nightmare, Elton speaks of witnessing his parents' murder. 8 years old, hidden beneath the porch boards, he watched through cracks as 5 men tortured his father for information about Cherokee gold that didn't exist. His mother's scream, his father's stoic silence. The sickening sounds that followed. His voice remained steady, while recounting horrors, emotion evident only in the white-knuckled grip on his knife handle. Jane reciprocates with her own story, not just of Harold's escalating violence, but of the subtle cruelties that preceded physical abuse. The isolation, the undermining of confidence, the manipulation that convinced her each beating was deserved. The words come haltingly at first, then in a torrent as months of enforced silence break. Morning brings Jane's request to learn hunting. No longer content with gathering plants while Elton provides meat, she insists on learning to feed herself. Her first attempt with his bow ends with an arrow lost in underbrush. Her second grazes a rabbit that escapes wounded, leaving Jane near tears at causing suffering without a clean kill. By the 5th day, she successfully brings down a grouse, her pride in the accomplishment outweighing squeamishness at preparing the bird. The shooting lessons follow naturally. Elton initially resists, concerned about noise carrying to unfriendly ears. Jane persists with uncharacteristic stubbornness. Harold's spectre haunts her dreams. She refuses to remain defenseless should he find her. Elton relents, teaching her to handle his spare revolver, how to load, aim, maintain the mechanism. Her first shots go wild, the recoil stronger than anticipated. By week's end, she consistently hits the tree trunk target from 20 paces. 2 hawks brings news that darkens Elton's mood. Harold spreads tales in Copper Creek of Apache savages kidnapping his beloved wife. A substantial bounty now hangs over Elton's head, attracting unsavory attention from bounty hunters and glory seekers. The Apache Council grows increasingly concerned about risk to the tribe. That evening brings their first genuine argument. Elton suggests taking Jane to a distant town, Denver or Santa Fe, where she might start anew beyond Harold's reach. His responsibility to his people demands he remove this danger he's brought upon them. Jane's refusal comes with unexpected fire. 3 years of submission burned away by recent independence. She will not run. She will not hide. She will not be passed between men who decide her fate without consultation. The argument ends in stalemate, both retreating to opposite sides of the cabin, yet something fundamental shifts between them. Elton sees not just a victim to protect, but a woman reclaiming her strength. Jane recognizes not an owner who claimed her, but a man risking everything to honor his principles. The distance between their sleeping places seems suddenly both essential and impossible. A tattered photograph emerges from beneath a loose floorboard as Jane sweeps the cabin during Elton's hunting trip. The small, faded image shows a family unlike any Jane expected. A tall white man in settler's clothes standing proudly beside a Cherokee woman in a blend of traditional and European garments. Between them stands a solemn boy of perhaps 5, his features a perfect blend of both parents. The physical resemblance to Elton is unmistakable, though decades separate the child in the image from the man she knows. Jane carefully returns the photograph to its hiding place, questions multiplying in her mind. The Apache warrior who rescued her carries more complex origins than she imagined. When Elton returns with a brace of rabbits, she says nothing of her discovery, uncertain if breaching this privacy might fracture their tentative trust. The revelation comes unexpectedly during an evening thunderstorm. Lightning illuminates the cabin in harsh flashes as rain pounds the roof. The thunderclaps trigger something in Elton. A restlessness, a heightened vigilance that Jane recognizes from her own moments of panic. When a particularly violent crack shakes the cabin, Elton's hand instinctively reaches toward the loose floorboard. Understanding dawns in his eyes when he sees Jane watching. With deliberate movements, he retrieves the photograph and places it on the table between them. The story unfolds in measured sentences, each one revealing another layer of the man before her. His father, James Moore, had been a fur trapper who ventured deeper into Cherokee territory than most white men dared. Rather than exploiting or threatening, he approached with respect, learning the language, honoring tradition. His mother, Nanyehi, came from a respected Cherokee family who initially opposed the union but relented upon recognizing James's genuine character. Their small homestead existed in the borderlands between worlds, teaching young Elton, then called Thomas, to navigate both cultures with equal facility. The family maintained this precarious balance until Thomas turned 8. 5 white settlers, furious at a breed lover occupying land they coveted, attacked during a spring thunderstorm. The sounds of rain and thunder have triggered memories ever since. The photograph represents the only possession he managed to salvage before fleeing into the wilderness. For weeks, the orphaned boy survived on skills his parents had taught him, moving steadily westward to escape territories where mixed-blood children found little mercy. Near death from exposure and starvation, he collapsed on Apache hunting ground. Instead of killing the intruder, the hunters brought him to their medicine woman, recognizing uncommon spirit in his survival. The Apache mountain people adopted him, renaming him Elton after a respected ancestor. Though initially intended as temporary charity, his quick intelligence and determination earned him a permanent place. The tribe's wisdom recognized the potential value of a child who understood white ways, yet held no loyalty to their cruelty. As Jane absorbs this history, pieces of Elton's character fall into proper alignment. His precise English, his extensive book collection, his ability to invoke territorial law during their confrontation with Harold. The man who claimed her in Copper Creek was neither fully Apache warrior nor white frontiersman, but something altogether more complex. Jane's own revelations follow naturally, no longer measured or hesitant. She speaks of her childhood dreams of becoming a teacher before her father's financial reversals necessitated a profitable marriage. of the books she secretly read in Harold's house when he believed her occupied with household accounts, of the small classroom she once hoped to establish in Copper Creek before Harold forbade her involvement with other men's children. Their shared confidences extend through the night, the thunderstorm passing as personal barriers fall. Jane describes the isolation of her marriage, friends and interests systematically eliminated until Harold occupied her entire world. Elton speaks of similar isolation among his adopted tribe, respected for his skills yet never fully belonging, always carrying the mark of difference. Dawn finds them still talking, exhausted yet lighter for the unburdening. When Martha appears unexpectedly at the canyon entrance later that morning, led by two hawks despite tribal concerns, she finds Jane and Elton changed in subtle ways. A certain ease between them, a watchfulness not entirely gone, but tempered by deeper understanding. Martha brings news wrapped in warning. Harold's rage grows more destructive with each passing week. His drinking worsens, his business dealings become increasingly reckless. Most concerning, his hired guns systematically search the surrounding wilderness. It is only a matter of time before they discover even this hidden canyon. A single eagle feather rests in Elton's palm, its shaft adorned with delicate beadwork and dyed horsehair. Chief Mangas, spiritual leader of the mountain Apache, had presented it during Elton's adoption ceremony 20 years earlier. Not merely decoration, the feather represents responsibility, to carry wisdom, to protect the tribe, to maintain balance between the spirit world and the physical one. Elton rarely removes it from its protective wrapping of soft deerskin, but today he holds it while contemplating the message, "Two hawks delivered at dawn." The tribal council demands Elton's presence. His actions in Copper Creek have created dangerous ripples. Though Martha departed with provisions and Two Hawks' escort, her visit confirmed the council's fears. The white woman's presence threatens the tribe's precarious peace with frontier settlements. Elton must explain himself before the elders and receive their judgment. Jane insists on accompanying him, despite the risks. No longer the terrified woman he rescued, she refuses to hide, while decisions affecting her future unfold elsewhere. Her stubbornness matches his own, a fact Elton acknowledges with reluctant admiration. They prepare for the journey in silence, each understanding what exposure beyond the canyon's safety might mean. The path to the Apache settlement winds through terrain designed to confuse outsiders, switchbacks, false trails, routes through shallow streambeds that leave no tracks. Even knowing the way, they travel cautiously, alert for Harold's searchers, rumored to patrol these mountains. Jane demonstrates surprising endurance, keeping pace without complaint. Despite the difficult terrain, the settlement appears suddenly between pine-covered slopes, 24 hide-covered dwellings arranged in traditional circles around central gathering spaces. Smoke rises from cooking fires. Children pause in their play to stare at the white woman accompanying their tribe's most unusual member. Women suspend food preparation. Men interrupt weapon crafting. Elders emerge from the council lodge, faces impassive, yet eyes sharp with assessment. Chief Manga stands with the quiet dignity of his 70 years, grey hair hanging in 2 braids adorned with beads and bone. Beside him sings at dawn the medicine woman who saved young Elton's life, now bent with age but eyes still bright with intelligence. 5 other elders complete the council, each wearing symbols of their specific wisdom and authority. The meeting occurs in the council lodge, a larger structure, open at the center to allow smoke from the sacred fire to reach the sky. Jane sits slightly behind Elton, observing proper respect while refusing invisibility. The questioning begins formally, each elder speaking in turn, first in Apache, then translated for Jane's benefit. Their concerns emerge clearly. Elton has potentially endangered the tribe by antagonizing a powerful white man. The peace maintained through careful diplomacy now balances on a knife edge. Elton answers with equal formality, explaining principles of honor that transcend tribal boundaries. His adopted people taught him that protecting the vulnerable represents the highest calling of a warrior. To ignore suffering when intervention lies within one's power dishonors the gift of strength. His words carry neither apology nor defiance, simply truth as he understands it. Unexpected strength enters the discussion when Jane moves forward to address the council directly. Speaking with careful respect but unmistakable conviction, she explains Harold's corrupt dealings with neighboring tribes, his plans to divert water rights, his history of broken promises. Harold Blackwood threatens Apache interests, regardless of Elton's intervention. His greed and ambition would eventually bring conflict to these mountains, whether Jane remained his wife or not. The council's deliberation continues through afternoon and into evening. Other tribal members bring food, lingering to glimpse the unusual proceedings. Children peer through openings in the lodge walls, curious about the white woman who speaks with such unexpected knowledge of their concerns. Near sunset, Sings at dawn rises painfully to her feet. Her position as both healer and spiritual guide grants special authority. She speaks of visions seen in sacred smoke, a joining of rivers long separated, strength found in unlikely unions. The tribe faces difficult seasons ahead, regardless of today's decision. Perhaps the spirits sent this unusual pair to help navigate coming challenges. Chief Manga ultimately grants his reluctant blessing. Elton may continue protecting the white woman, but must also honor his responsibilities to the tribe. The mountain canyon offers temporary sanctuary, not permanent solution. Proper balance must eventually be restored. As twilight deepens, scouts return with troubling reports. Harold's men move systematically through the foothills. 3 white hunters trespassed near sacred springs that morning. The search perimeter tightens with each passing day. Yellow Fox, a young warrior known for resenting Elton's special status, listens to these reports with unusual intensity, eyes following Jane's movements with calculation rather than curiosity. The night brings celebration despite lingering concerns. Dancing, storytelling, sharing of food. Jane experiences her first immersion in Apache culture beyond Elton's individual practices. The women's initial weariness gradually softens as they recognize another survivor of male violence. By firelight, Jane's pale skin and Elton's mixed features appear less foreign, their differences muted by shared humanity. A carefully drawn map lies unfolded between them, as edges worn from frequent handling. Crafted on deerskin with natural pigments, it details the secret paths between the Apache settlement and Elton's canyon refuge. Hunting grounds, water sources, and sacred sites appear as symbols intelligible only to those taught their meaning. Most importantly, it shows hidden routes unknown to white settlers, passages through seemingly impassable terrain that provide escape when needed. Elton acquired this knowledge over decades, adding to the map with each new discovery. Now it represents their lifeline as they slip away from the settlement before dawn. Their departure comes with Chief Mangus's blessing, but carries the weight of unspoken concerns. 2 Hawks accompanies them partway, his tracking skills ensuring they leave no trail for others to follow. The rising sun finds them moving steadily through pine forests, alert for signs of pursuit. Jane's confidence in the wilderness has grown remarkably. She moves with deliberate quiet, eyes scanning for danger with practiced vigilance. The first indication of wrongness awaits at the canyon entrance. Subtle signs visible only to Elton's trained eye. Disturbed gravel, broken twigs, an unnatural arrangement of fallen leaves. Someone has discovered their sanctuary. 2 Hawks disappears into the surrounding forest to scout while Elton and Jane wait in concealed positions, weapons ready. 2 Hawks returns with grim confirmation. Bootprints matching white men's footwear circle the cabin. Horse droppings indicate at least 6 mounts. Most concerning, tracks show someone approached from the direction of the Apache settlement. Before the others arrived, someone familiar with the hidden trail. The map's secrets have been compromised. Entering the cabin reveals thorough ransacking. Elton's books lie scattered and torn. Food stores have been dumped and contaminated. Jane's few possessions, the clothing Martha brought, her precious journal, have been shredded and trampled. Most damning, Elton's medicine bundle has been desecrated, its sacred contents strewn across the dirt floor. Two Hawk's fury manifests in uncharacteristic vehemence as he identifies the betrayer. Yellow Fox's distinctive moccasin print appears among the white men's boots. His jealousy of Elton's status, long simmering beneath surface respect, has finally erupted into treachery. Worse, the particular pattern of destruction suggests Yellow Fox revealed not just their location, but Elton's mixed heritage, his reverence for certain white customs, his collection of books that many tribal members view with suspicion. Escape becomes their only option. Two Hawks departs immediately to warn the settlement of Yellow Fox's betrayal. Jane and Elton gather what supplies remain usable, abandoning the canyon that briefly served as sanctuary. The map indicates an ancient cliff dwelling 3 days' journey south, a defensive position where approaching enemies must cross open ground to reach the single access point. Their journey follows game trails and dry washes, avoiding any path where pursuers might anticipate their movement. They travel through darkness when moonlight permits, resting during daylight hours in concealed positions. Water becomes precious as they avoid known springs that Harold's men might watch. Despite their precautions, signs of pursuit multiply: distant gunshots, circling buzzards where someone made camp, the occasional glint of sunlight on metal from ridgelines above. The accident occurs during their second night of travel. A loose stone gives way beneath Jane's foot on a steep traverse, sending her sliding down a gravelly slope. Though Elton catches her before she falls far, the damage is done. Her ankle twists painfully, swelling immediately. Binding it tightly allows her to continue with Elton's support, but their pace slows dramatically. The 3-day journey stretches into 4, then 5. Dawn of the 6th day reveals the cliff dwelling in the distance. Ancient stone structures built into a natural alcove high on a red rock wall. The final approach requires crossing an exposed valley floor, then climbing a steep trail visible to anyone watching the area. They wait until dusk, observing for signs of ambush before attempting the crossing. The moment that changes everything comes unexpectedly. As twilight deepens and they prepare to move, Elton grasps Jane's arm in sudden warning. Yellow Fox's distinctive bird call sounds from the rocks above the cliff dwelling. Answering whistles confirm Harold's men already occupy their destination. The betrayal is complete. Yellow Fox hasn't merely revealed their past location, but anticipates their movements. With pursuit behind and ambush ahead, they seek shelter in a shallow cave barely large enough for two. The night brings them closer than propriety allows, huddled together for warmth and concealment. Jane's fear manifests not in trembling, but in fierce determination. Elton's stoicism cracks to reveal genuine concern. Words long unspoken pass between them, acknowledgement of feelings that transcend gratitude or obligation. Their first kiss carries the desperation of those who may not see another dawn, yet also the tenderness of souls recognizing their match. A bundle of yellowed letters tied with faded ribbon emerges from Elton's innermost pocket as they plan their escape. These documents, collected over years of careful observation, detail Harold Blackwood's criminal activities, fraudulent land deals, water rights stolen through forged signatures, arrangements with corrupt officials to cheat both settlers and tribes. Elton had intended them as insurance, evidence to protect the Apache should negotiations fail. Now they represent their last hope for leverage against overwhelming odds. Dawn brings clarity to their desperate situation. Harold's men encircle their position, 3 visible from their hiding place, more certainly waiting beyond sight. Yellow Fox's distinctive silhouette appears periodically on the ridge above, his tracking skills ensuring no escape route remains undiscovered. Their meager remaining supplies allow perhaps one more day without risking movement. Elton's plan forms from necessity rather than confidence. Using the terrain's acoustics, he will create a diversion on the western slope, drawing pursuit away from the eastern path where Jane might slip through to safety. Once free, she could reach Sheriff Dawson with the incriminating letter. For all his collaboration with Harold, Dawson remains bound by territorial law. Evidence this substantial might force intervention, especially with witnesses from neighboring settlements, confirming the pattern of corruption. Jane's refusal comes swiftly and without compromise. She will not abandon Elton to certain capture or death. Her ankle, though still swollen, bears weight well enough for her to fight alongside him. Her skill with his spare revolver, while not matching his expertise, has progressed beyond mere competence. Together they stand better odds than separated. The confrontation begins with surprising success. Elton's knowledge of Apache battle tactics creates momentary confusion among Harold's hired guns. Controlled shots from changing positions suggest multiple defenders. Jane's contribution, 3 carefully placed bullets that splint a rock near Yellow Fox's position, drives the traitor temporarily from his vantage point. For precious minutes, victory seems possible. 2 of Harold's men retreat under the impression they face a larger force. The eastern path briefly clears, offering potential escape. Then mathematics reasserts its cruel inevitability. 6 attackers, even disorganized, eventually overwhelm 2 defenders with limited ammunition. A flanking maneuver cuts off their retreat. Yellow Fox's reappearance on their southern perimeter completes the encirclement. Capture comes not with surrender but exhaustion. Their final bullets spent, physical reserves depleted by days of pursuit, they stand back to back as footsteps approach from multiple directions. Rough hands separate them despite resistance. Elton's stoic expression betrays emotion only when Jane is dragged beyond his sight. Her final glimpse shows him surrounded by 4 men, still fighting despite the futility. Harold arrives with the theatrical timing of a man who arranged his entrance for maximum effect. His appearance startles Jane. The once imposing figure now shows signs of deterioration. Bloated features and bloodshot eyes evidence increased drink. His formerly immaculate attire hangs slightly disheveled, yet power still emanates from him, the dangerous energy of a man balanced between control and chaos. Yellow Fox stands at Harold's right hand, pride and uncertainty warring in his expression. The promised reward, leadership position among his people once Harold secures water rights, seems less certain as he witnesses Harold's unstable behavior. The white men's treatment of their captives, particularly the Apache half-breed they beat methodically while forcing Jane to watch, reveals the true nature of his new alliance. Night brings momentary reprieve. Jane finds herself bound inside a hastily erected tent, separated from Elton but able to hear his labored breathing from a nearby clearing. Guards rotate positions outside, voices occasionally rising in argument over cards or liquor. Harold makes one brief visit, his threatening promises regarding tomorrow's return to Copper Creek, designed to break her spirit. Instead, they solidify her resolve to escape regardless of cost. The unexpected sound of canvas tearing near the tent's rear startles Jane from half-sleep. Martha's weathered face appears in the opening, finger pressed to lips in warning. Her presence seems miraculous until her whispered explanation. She followed Harold's expedition at a distance, anticipating his eventual success. The boarding house owner's concern transcends mere friendship. She recognized in Jane the daughter lost years earlier to similar abuse. The knife Martha slips through the opening gleams dully in the minimal moonlight. Small but sharp, its bone handle fits Jane's palm as if made for her. Martha's parting instructions direct her to wait for the guard change at midnight when attention momentarily lapses during transition. Elton's location, the patrol pattern, the weakest point in their perimeter. Martha provides this critical intelligence before disappearing into darkness. Jane's hands, once trained for embroidery and gentle wifely arts, now work methodically at her bonds. The blade makes silent progress against rope fibers. Freedom comes gradually, circulation painfully returning to numbed limbs. When midnight arrives, she moves with deliberate purpose through the sliced tent wall, knife clenched between teeth, determination propelling each step toward Elton's position. A tarnished sheriff's badge catches moonlight as Sheriff Dawson studies the distant campfires of Harold's search party. Once a symbol of justice, the badge now weighs heavy with compromise and silent complicity. For years, Dawson enforced Harold Blackwood's version of law in Copper Creek, turning blind eyes to corruption that lined his own pockets. Yet something in Jane's public humiliation awakened dormant conscience. Now he tracks Harold's expedition with the skill acquired during younger years as an army scout, his presence unknown to either the pursuers or their quarry. Jane moves like a shadow between moonlit patches, her newly acquired stealth serving her well. The guard slumps against a pine trunk, whiskey jug tipped beside him. Elton lies bound to a makeshift post, head hanging forward in exhaustion or unconscious. Blood darkens his shirt from multiple beatings. Jane approaches with knife ready, every sense alert for alarm. The ropes fall away under her determined soaring. Elton stirs, recognition dawning slowly in pain-clouded eyes. Their whispered exchange confirms his ability to move despite injuries. Supporting his weight against her shoulder, Jane guides their painfully slow retreat toward the eastern slope. Each step risks discovery from Yellow Fox's superior tracking abilities or the guards' routine patrol. Dawn approaches as they reach the base of a steep ravine, 2 miles from the camp. Elton's condition worsens with exertion, internal injuries from the beatings manifesting in labored breathing and occasional bloody cough. Their limited supplies, only what Jane managed to grab during escape, will not sustain them long. The nearest settlement lies 4 days' journey across open territory where Harold's men will surely search. The abandoned mine entrance appears unexpectedly, half hidden behind scrub brush and fallen rocks. Its timber supports, though rotted with age, still maintain the tunnel's integrity enough to offer temporary shelter. Inside, the temperature drops noticeably. Old mining tools rust against walls lined with abandoned cart tracks. Jane settles Elton on a relatively flat section of ground, using her shawl as cushioning against the hard-packed dirt. Elton's injuries require treatment beyond Jane's limited knowledge. The improvised bandages fashioned from torn clothing stem external bleeding but do nothing for damages unseen. His fever rises through morning into afternoon. Delirium sets in by evening, Apache and English mingling in fevered murmurs about past traumas and present fears. Jane recognizes the impossible choice before her: remain and watch him deteriorate, or seek help at potentially fatal risk. Dawn finds Jane traveling alone toward Copper Creek, staying off established trails. Elton's spare revolver hangs heavy at her hip, loaded with their last 5 bullets. The bundle of incriminating letters remains secure in her bodice. Her plan holds little subtlety. Find Sheriff Dawson, present evidence of Harold's crimes, and demand assistance for Elton. The likelihood of success seems minute against the certainty of Elton's death without medical intervention. The encounter with Dawson occurs unexpectedly at Wright's Creek Crossing, far from town. The sheriff appears suddenly from dense underbrush, rifle lowered but ready. His presence alone in territory where Harold's influence predominates raises immediate suspicion. Jane levels the revolver with unwavering aim, distance between them sufficient to prevent easy disarmament. Tension dissolves gradually as Dawson speaks of growing concerns about Harold's methods. The territorial governor has begun investigating corruption along the frontier, pressuring local law enforcement to demonstrate proper procedure or face replacement. More personally, Dawson's own daughter recently escaped an abusive marriage in Denver, giving him uncomfortable perspective on Jane's situation. For weeks he has quietly gathered evidence against Harold, building a case that might withstand political interference. Jane's letters provide the final documentation needed to act legally against Copper Creek's most powerful citizen. Dawson recognizes certain signatures from territorial offices, frauds that extend beyond local corruption into federal crimes. His badge, long symbolic of compromised justice, might finally serve its intended purpose. Their tenuous alliance forms around mutual need. Dawson possesses the legal authority to challenge Harold, but lacks irrefutable evidence. Jane offers that evidence but needs immediate help for Elton. Together they return toward the mine, Dawson's medical kit and wilderness experience improving Elton's chances for survival. The sheriff's deputy, Davis, complicates matters with unexpected appearance at their campsite that evening. Initially welcomed as reinforcement, Davis's probing questions about their destination raise Jane's suspicions. When Dawson briefly scouts ahead, Davis reveals his true allegiance through pointed inquiries about Elton's exact location. His hand drifts toward his holster as he suggests simplifying their situation by eliminating the Apache problem permanently. Dawson's return interrupts the developing confrontation. Something in Jane's defensive posture and Davis's predatory stance communicates the deputy's betrayal without words. The deputy's excuse about checking perimeter security convinces neither of them. His departure toward town carries ominous implications. Harold will soon know of Dawson's defection and their approximate location. The race to reach Elton before Harold's men transforms from urgent to desperate. Jane leads the way with newfound strength born from fear, not for herself, but for the man who sacrificed everything to save her. Behind them, hoofbeats announce pursuit from multiple riders approaching rapidly from the direction of Copper Creek. A wrinkled newspaper lies open on Martha's boarding house table, its headline boldly declaring water rights scheme exposed. The article, written by the young editor of the neighboring Silverton Gazette, details systematic fraud in regional land deals. Though Harold Blackwood's name appears only as a prominent Copper Creek businessman, the descriptions leave little doubt about his identity. Most damning are the documented connections between altered watercourse maps, forged Apache agreements, and territorial officials now under federal investigation. The editor promises further revelations in forthcoming issues, suggesting sources close to the criminal enterprise have begun providing evidence. Copper Creek undergoes subtle transformation in Harold's extended absence. Whispered conversations in the general store grow gradually louder. Men who previously deferred to Harold's opinions now openly question his business practices. The saloon owner, whose establishment provided alibi for Harold's worst violence against Jane, now recalls disturbing incidents with remarkable clarity. Most significantly, women gather in unprecedented numbers at Martha's boarding house, sharing stories previously hidden behind closed doors and downcast eyes. Sheriff Dawson returns to town without announcement, avoiding the jailhouse where Deputy Davis might report his movements. Instead, he conducts careful recruitment at the livery stable, the blacksmith shop, the surveyor's office. Men with personal grievances against Harold or professional ethics that resisted compromise receive measured explanations of the evidence against Copper Creek's most powerful citizen. Few commit immediately, but seeds of resistance take root in fertile ground. While Dawson builds potential allies, Jane remains with Elton at a new hiding place, an abandoned trapper's cabin near the territorial border. His condition improves slowly under her constant care. The fever breaks after 3 days of herbal remedies remembered from his teachings. Broken ribs begin knitting together with proper binding. The internal bleeding subsides without claiming his life. Throughout his recovery, Jane reads to him from books Dawson retrieved from the ransacked canyon cabin, a gesture that brings more healing than medicine alone could provide. In Copper Creek, Martha emerges as unexpected leader among the town's women. Her boarding house becomes headquarters for quiet revolution against male violence, long accepted as inevitable frontier reality. 3 other wives bear bruises, similar to Jane's former injury. A young widow reveals her husband's death came not from mining accident, but suicide following financial ruin at Harold's hands. The seamstress speaks of special payments demanded by Harold to maintain her shop lease. Individual grievances coalesce into collective indignation. Yellow Fox experiences his own transformation in Harold's camp. What began as alliance born from jealousy of Elton sours as he observes Harold's treatment of captured Apache scouts who crossed their path. The promised partnership regarding tribal water rights reveals itself as elaborate deception. Harold's drunken boasts about his plans for reservation lands eliminate any remaining illusion of mutual benefit. Yellow Fox slips away during night watch, his tracking skills ensuring no pursuit can follow his carefully obscured trail. The tribal council receives Yellow Fox's confession with grave silence. His betrayal of Elton and Jane, motivated by personal resentment rather than tribal benefit, violates fundamental Apache principles. Yet his information about Harold's expanded operations carries urgent importance. Settler encroachment threatens not just traditional hunting grounds, but the tribe's very existence. Water diversion would transform fertile valleys into barren dust within 2 seasons. Chief Mangas dispatches riders to neighboring tribes, building coalition against common threat. Harold's business partners recognize impending disaster in his increasingly erratic behavior. The banker who facilitated questionable loans makes discreet arrangements to transfer accounts to the Silverton financial institution. The saloon owner cancels outstanding credit previously extended in expectation of future favors. The stage line manager misplaces Harold's standing reservation for the monthly Denver connection. Individual actions create collective abandonment of a sinking vessel. Dawson receives unexpected support from the Territorial Marshal's office. His carefully documented evidence, combined with similar reports from neighboring settlements, justifies official intervention. 2 deputy marshals arrive without fanfare, taking rooms at Martha's boarding house rather than announcing their presence at the jailhouse. Their warrant for Harold's arrest bears the governor's seal, authority superseding local political influence. Jane and Elton make difficult decisions during his recovery. Their feelings, acknowledged during desperate flight and sustained through healing, face practical challenges. A mixed-race couple finds acceptance in neither white settlements nor tribal communities. The letters proving Harold's crimes offer potential justice, but guarantee violent resistance before resolution. Elton's responsibility to his tribe conflicts with his growing commitment to Jane. Her need for independence after escaping one man's control creates hesitation about joining her life to another's, regardless of deeper feelings. After extensive discussion spanning several days, they reach shared conclusion. They will return to Copper Creek together. The evidence must reach proper authorities. Harold's power over Jane, over the town, over the region's future, must end through legitimate process rather than continued flight. If their unlikely love survives this final confrontation, they will build whatever life remains possible afterward. If not, they will have completed the necessary journey from victims to defenders of justice. The Copper Creek Town Charter, established 1868, rests open on the council table, its yellowed parchment, revealing the founding principles long ignored in practice. Originally created to establish governance for the mining settlement, the document contains provisions for removing officials who violate public trust. Section 4 explicitly states that any business owner using position for fraudulent dealings or promotion of violence shall forfeit voting rights and property holdings within town limits. These words, largely forgotten since the Charter's creation, now form the centerpiece of legal strategy against Harold Blackwood. Jane stands on the boarding house steps facing the gathering crowd. 3 weeks have passed since her escape from Harold's camp. Elton remains partially concealed at the edge of the assembly, his presence both protection and provocation. Sheriff Dawson and the territorial deputies position themselves strategically around the square, anticipating potential violence. Martha and 5 other women form a protective semicircle behind Jane, their presence lending silent validation to her testimony. The speech begins hesitantly, Jane's voice carrying the tremor of someone unaccustomed to public address. She describes her arrival in Copper Creek as a hopeful bride, the gradual isolation imposed by Harold, the first slap following a conversation with the shopkeeper's wife, the escalating violence that accompanied each questioning of his business affairs, the increasingly desperate attempts to hide injuries beneath high collars and long sleeves, the final beating and public humiliation that culminated in chains. As Jane speaks, windows open along the square, women lean out, listening with growing recognition of shared experience. Men shift uncomfortably, some avoiding eye contact with their own wives. The territorial deputies observe reactions, noting which citizens demonstrate sympathy versus hostility. Sheriff Dawson maintains steady vigilance for Harold's expected arrival, Jane concludes by producing the letters documenting Harold's fraudulent dealings with territorial officials. The young editor from the Silverton Gazette steps forward to accept copies, promising publication across 3 counties. The town council members exchange concerned glances as Jane details which prominent citizens facilitated specific land grabs and water rights thefts. Names of respected businessmen appear alongside documented bribes. Most powerful is the moment when Martha steps forward with evidence of Harold's involvement in her daughter's death 5 years earlier. What the town accepted as tragic illness emerges as the consequence of violence during pregnancy, followed by Harold's pressure on the doctor to falsify death records. The physician, now visibly distressed, confirms this account from the crowd's edge. Other women move forward one by one. The seamstress, the baker's wife, the young widow, each contributes testimony of Harold's abuses. Financial, physical, sexual. Individual stories weave into pattern of calculated predation protected by wealth and position. What began as one woman's account becomes community recognition of collective failure to protect their most vulnerable. The town council hastily convenes in public view rather than their usual private chamber. The chairman, elderly and respected, calls for emergency invocation of charter provisions regarding removal of harmful influence from town governance. The banker, despite previous facilitation of Harold's dealings, motions for immediate freezing of related accounts pending investigation. The motion passes with single dissenting vote from the livery owner, Harold's cousin by marriage. Harold's arrival interrupts proceedings with calculated dramatic timing. 8 hired guns flank him as he rides into the square, Winchester rifle prominent across his saddle. His appearance shocks those who knew him only months earlier. The once immaculate businessman now shows visible deterioration, bloated features, unkempt beard, clothing stained from trail living. Only his eyes retain familiar cold calculation as he assesses the gathered crowd. Temporary silence falls as Harold dismounts. His men spread outward, creating defensive perimeter around their employer. Harold approaches the council table with exaggerated confidence, demanding explanation for unauthorized meeting regarding his affairs. His hand rests meaningfully on his holstered pistol while addressing the council chairman. The territorial deputy's presentation of arrest warrant shatters Harold's performance. Federal charges of mail fraud, conspiracy against tribal treaties, and witness intimidation supersede local concerns. The document bears signatures from territorial governor and federal marshal. Harold's expression shifts from confidence to calculation to barely suppressed rage as legal reality penetrates. At the square's edge, movement draws attention. 2 hawks leads 20 Apache warriors into town, their arrival coordinated through Elton's communication network. They make no threatening gestures, simply form visible presence along the western perimeter. Their message requires no verbalization. Tribal interests have representation in today's proceedings. Harold's facade cracks entirely. He orders his men to secure the council building against this illegal gathering. 3 hired guns move toward the steps where Jane stands, hands reaching for weapons. Sheriff Dawson and his deputies intercept them with drawn firearms. The livery owner attempts to rally Harold's remaining supporters, creating momentary confusion that Harold exploits to retreat toward the saloon. Yellow Fox's sudden appearance before Harold halts his escape. The young Apache who once betrayed Elton now blocks Harold's path, bow drawn and arrow aimed at the businessman's chest. Behind Yellow Fox stand 4 additional warriors, silent witnesses to this personal redemption. Yellow Fox's expression communicates everything necessary. The debt incurred through betrayal can only be repaid through justice. The iron chains that once bound Jane lie broken in the dust of Copper Creek's main street, trampled beneath running feet as violence erupts. These shattered links, recovered by Martha from the day of Jane's public humiliation and displayed during her testimony, now symbolize not just one woman's captivity, but an entire town breaking free from corruption's grip. As gunfire erupts across the square, the chains catch afternoon sunlight, transformed from instruments of control to artifacts of liberation. Harold's desperate command to his hired guns ignites inevitable conflict. The first shot comes from the saloon doorway, a panicked attempt by the barkeeper to protect his establishment from encroaching chaos. The bullet strikes no one but shatters the temporary standoff. Harold's men respond with coordinated precision that speaks to their professional backgrounds. The territorial deputies return fire from protected positions beside the council building. Townspeople scatter for cover as lead splinters wood and shatters windows. Jane takes shelter behind an overturned wagon, Elton materializing beside her with fluid movement that belies his recent injuries. His revolver appears in practiced hands as he scans for immediate threats. Two hawks signals from across the street, directing Apache warriors to secure the town's perimeter without directly engaging in white men's conflict. Their presence prevents Harold's reinforcements from arriving, while allowing the territorial legal process to unfold. Sheriff Dawson demonstrates unexpected courage, standing openly in the street while calling for cessation of hostilities. His badge catches sunlight as he invokes federal authority, supporting the arrest warrant. Two of Harold's hired guns lower weapons in response, recognizing legal boundaries beyond which payment no longer justifies resistance. The remaining mercenaries maintain defensive positions around Harold, professional loyalty temporarily outweighing legal concerns. Through gunsmoke and confusion, Jane glimpses Harold slipping away from the main confrontation. He abandons his hired protection, ducking between buildings with the desperation of a man recognizing final defeat. His destination becomes clear as he moves toward the livery stable, where fresh horses promise escape from justice. Without conscious decision, Jane finds herself in pursuit, Elton's spare revolver firm in her grasp. Years of Harold evading consequences crystallize into determination that he will not escape again. Elton notices her movement too late to intervene. His shout of warning disappears beneath renewed gunfire as Harold's remaining loyalists provide covering distraction for their employer's writs. Two hawks signals warriors to track Jane's path, but they maintain tribal discipline by not directly entering the conflict. The street battle intensifies as deputy marshals press advantage against increasingly disorganized hired guns. Jane moves with newfound stealth through familiar town geography. Harold taught her to become invisible during their marriage. She now employs that skill against him. Each alleyway and back entrance holds memories of past errands under his controlling gaze. Each shadow once concealed bruises from public view. Now these same spaces provide her cover during pursuit of the man who inflicted those wounds. The livery stable looms ahead, its wide doors partially open. Inside, horses shift nervously at the sounds of distant gunfire. Jane pauses at the corner, evaluating approach options with tactical clarity that would have been impossible months earlier. Harold's distinctive outline moves between stalls, hastily preparing a mount for escape. His usual methodical nature gives way to frantic movements, saddle straps misaligned, bridle improperly secured. Jane enters silently through the rear door, positioned behind stacked hay bales, with clear sightline to Harold's location. The revolver rises steadily in both hands, aimed with the precision Elton taught during their wilderness refuge. 5 bullets remain in the chamber, more than sufficient for justice if her aim holds true. Her finger rests alongside the trigger rather than upon it, final decision not yet made between ending Harold's life or facilitating legal punishment. Harold senses presence behind him with the heightened awareness of prey animals. He turns slowly, hands conspicuously raised, negotiator's smile forming beneath his unkempt mustache. The expression that once manipulated business partners and charmed Boston society now appears as transparent mask over desperation. His eyes betray calculation even as his posture suggests surrender. Elton appears in the main doorway, silhouetted against afternoon lights. His approach combines Apache's stealth with frontiersman's vigilance. The silver revolver that once secured Jane's freedom now guards against Harold's final desperate actions. Elton advances cautiously, attention divided between Harold's visible hands and potential concealed weapons. The three-way confrontation crystallizes decades of frontier conflict into single tableau. Harold represents wealth built on exploitation and fraud. Elton embodies the complex heritage of two cultures, forcibly intertwined through violence and reluctant cooperation. Jane stands as unexpected catalyst, the supposedly powerless woman whose resistance sparked regional transformation. Between them, justice hangs in precarious balance, awaiting decision between legal process and personal vengeance. Harold's bullwhip hangs coiled at his saddle horn, the braided leather that once left welts across Jane's back now within her direct line of sight. This instrument of discipline and punishment, wielded during their marriage to reinforce Harold's dominance, dangles impotently in the dusty stable air. Jane's eyes fix momentarily on its familiar shape before returning to Harold's face, the revolver in her hands never wavering from its aim at his chest. The stable's heavy atmosphere thickens with dust motes swirling in shafts of afternoon light. Outside, gunfire diminishes as territorial deputies secure the town square. Harold's ears register the changing sounds, his mind calculating dwindling escape options with each passing second. His smile remains fixed, while his eyes dart between potential weapons within reach. The derringer hidden in his boot remains his final advantage, knowledge that steadies his performance of surrender. Elton advances with measured steps, positioning himself to maintain clear sightlines to both Harold and the stable's rear exit. His experiences tracking both animals and men have taught him to recognize the particular stillness that precedes sudden violence. Harold emanates this predatory readiness despite his raised hands and conciliatory posture. The distance between them, 20 feet of hay-strewn ground, represents the final battlefield of their extended conflict. Jane speaks first, her voice steady where once it would have trembled before Harold's authority. She demands accountability for specific crimes, names of women abused, land fraudulently acquired, lives destroyed through calculated manipulation. The revolver remains leveled despite the emotional weight behind her word. Months in wilderness hiding have strengthened not just her aim, but her resolve. Harold responds with practiced charm that once swayed Boston investors and territorial officials. He minimizes accusations as misunderstandings, reframes exploitation as business necessity, dismisses violence as regrettable but justified discipline. His performance carries polished conviction developed through years of successful manipulation. When he addresses Jane as "my dear," the endearment curdles in the stable air, revealing the rot beneath genteel facade. His narrative gradually shifts from denial to justification as he recognizes the futility of complete innocence claims. The frontier rewards strength and cunning, he explains, not weakness or sentiment. His expansion of holdings merely follows American tradition of manifesting destiny through aggressive acquisition. The Apache and other tribes must inevitably yield to progress, their rights secondary to civilization's advancement. His treatment of Jane simply reflected necessary domestic order within harsh frontier conditions. As Harold speaks, his body language subtly changes. Weight shifts toward his right foot, fingers flexing imperceptibly in preparation for movement. Elton recognizes these preparations through hard-earned wilderness vigilance. Jane perceives them through intimate knowledge of Harold's patterns before violence. Both tighten focus on his hands, awaiting the moment pretense transforms to action. Harold's monologue reaches its climax with unexpected honesty. The careful fraud regarding Apache water rights emerges in detailed confession. Names of bribed officials, forged documents, manipulated surveys, all flow freely as Harold abandons pretense of innocence for the more satisfying narrative of successful conquest. His voice carries pride in these accomplishments. The mask of civilization fully discarded to reveal ruthless ambition beneath. The confession serves dual purpose, genuine boasting and calculated distraction. As Harold details his strategic brilliance in acquiring tribal lands, his hand inches imperceptibly toward his boot. Jane recognizes the movement pattern from previous violent episodes in their marriage. The familiar tension before explosion triggers learned responses, heightened awareness, accelerated heartbeat, narrowed visual focus. Jane faces momentous choice as Harold's hand nears his hidden derringer. Frontier justice would justify shooting the man who tortured her for years. Personal vengeance calls for ending threat permanently. Yet something deeper, perhaps the civilization Harold claimed to represent while violating its principles, stays her finger on the trigger. Justice requires process beyond personal retribution, accountability beyond simple elimination. Her decision manifests as deliberate adjustment of aim from Harold's chest to his leg. The shot cracks through stable air with decisive finality. Harold crumples with shock rather than pain predominating his expression. His planned lunge for the derringer transforms to graceless collapse, blood blooming across his trouser leg. The wound, while painful, poses no mortal threat. Exactly as Jane intended, Harold's stunned disbelief at Jane's marksmanship provides moment for Elton to close distance and secure the hidden derringer. The small gun emerges from Harold's boot exactly where Jane indicated it would be found. This physical evidence of her intimate knowledge of Harold's habits and hiding places validates her previous testimony more powerfully than any spoken accusation. Justice appears imminent until Harold reveals his final desperate gambit. The knife concealed within his jacket flashes unsuspectedly toward Jane. Elton's intervention comes with preternatural quickness, his body interposing between blade and intended victim. The ensuing struggle occurs in violent blur, three bodies entangled in primitive contest, where civilization's rules temporarily suspend. The knife finds flesh, but not as intended. Harold's own momentum drives the blade into his abdomen as Elton deflects his arm's trajectory. The shocked expression on Harold's face reflects recognition of ironic culmination, destroyed by his own weapon, just as his empire collapsed through consequences of his own actions. Blood spreads across expensive fabric imported from San Francisco, wealth powerless against mortality's final equality. The property deed lies unfolded on the town council table, Harold's flamboyant signature now marked with the territorial court's official stamp of transfer. This document, previously representing Jane's captivity within a property she never truly possessed, now establishes her legal ownership of lands worth more than most frontier settlements. The homestead, cattle, mining interests, and water rights accumulated through Harold's schemes have reverted to his widow through territorial inheritance law. What once symbolized her imprisonment now establishes her independence. Harold's burial occurs without ceremony at the edge of the cemetery, where suicides and murderers traditionally rest in unmarked graves. No mourners attend beyond the necessary officials documenting proper disposal of the body. The town undertaker, once among Harold's poker companions, performs his duties with mechanical efficiency. The territorial judge notes death circumstances in official ledgers with clinical detachment. The physician who falsified previous death certificates ensures this final record contains unvarnished truth. News spreads through frontier settlements with surprising speed. Stage drivers carry reports to neighboring communities. The Silverton Gazette publishes detailed accounts of Harold's criminal enterprises and final confrontation. Telegram operators transmit abbreviated versions to Denver and beyond. The narrative transforms with each retelling, Jane's role expanding from victim to frontier heroine. Elton's actions recast as romantic rather than principled intervention. By month's end, the story reaches Eastern newspapers as morality tale about justice in untamed territory. Sheriff Dawson conducts formal apology before assembled townspeople for his years of enabling Harold's abuses. His badge, once tarnished by compromise, gleams newly polished as he pledges reformed administration of law enforcement. The territorial governor's official commendation for exposing corruption hangs framed in the jailhouse, visible reminder of redemption through proper action. Most meaningful, Dawson personally visits each woman who testified against Harold, acknowledging their courage and his previous failures. Yellow Fox undergoes tribal judgment for his betrayal of Elton and indirect endangerment of the Apache community. The council sentences him to year-long purification rituals under Sings at Dawn's guidance. His status within the tribe diminishes permanently, yet the path to partial redemption remains open through dedicated service to community welfare. His knowledge of Harold's operations proves valuable as the tribe renegotiates water rights with territorial authorities. The women of Copper Creek establish formal committee for protection of abuse victims, with Martha serving as acknowledged leader. The boarding house expands with additional rooms specifically designated as temporary sanctuary for those escaping violent situations. Women from surrounding settlements journey to consult with this unprecedented frontier resource. What began as Jane's individual resistance evolves into regional movement, challenging accepted mistreatment previously dismissed as private family matters. Jane's inheritance creates practical challenges alongside opportunities. Harold's business partners approach cautiously, uncertain how to engage with female property owner possessing leverage over regional commerce. The banker offers management services with transparent condescension until Jane produces detailed ledgers demonstrating comprehensive understanding of financial operations. The cattle broker attempts pricing manipulation until she references specific market rates from recent Denver newspapers. Each interaction establishes her competence and determination to maintain direct control over her affairs. Elton faces his own decisions regarding future relationships with both the Apache tribe and white settlement. Chief Mangos offers renewed standing within tribal council, acknowledging the ultimate vindication of Elton's controversial intervention. The territorial governor proposes official position as liaison between government and indigenous communities, recognizing valuable perspective from his mixed heritage. Both opportunities require painful choice between worlds that have simultaneously embraced and rejected him throughout his life. The town council extends unprecedented invitation for Elton to serve as local representative in negotiations with surrounding tribes. The merchant who previously tolerated his presence now actively seeks his business. The saloon owner who once refused service now offers free drinks with embarrassing heartiness. These sudden overtures carry transparent calculation alongside genuine reappraisal, testing Elton's capacity for forgiveness after a lifetime of exclusion. Jane and Elton find private moments amid public transformation to discuss personal implications of recent events. The cabin where they first found sanctuary has been repaired, offering temporary retreat from curious attention following Harold's death. Their conversations acknowledge fundamental question beneath practical considerations: what relationship remains possible now that external threats no longer necessitate their alliance?